we have a lot of projects in Apache Hadoop, and we have a lot of points of entry. It's a storage system, it's a processing engine, it's a platform for real-time streaming, it's an ingest engine. There's many points that we actually need to address. And if you take a database, that database is actually pretty simple. You don't actually manage the file underneath, that's up to the database itself. You just send SQL in and you get SQL out. If you don't want someone to look at a table, you send a grant statement that indicates that either they're allowed to or they're not, right? So pretty simple, and that's not because databases are far superior, it's just because they only do one thing, and Hadoop does a lot of stuff. So it's more complicated. This is more like any platform that you're going to build that might be made up of databases as well as application engines, and that's really what you're dealing with. So if you had a traditional, I have a database, I have an application tier, I have web servers, I have to manage certs, it's the same stuff, it's just arranged differently. So if you're a security architect, you just have to know where to look, but you're still dealing with the same things. And you're still going to have to pull your hair out when it comes to managing SSL certs. We'll get to that. All right, so perimeter level security. I kind of mentioned Knox. We're going to talk about that in detail. Network security with firewalls, we're not going to talk about that in detail. That is a totally different subject. If anyone wants to talk about firewalls and best practices for firewalls, I'm more than happy to answer questions on it within the context of some of the implementations we're going to talk about. Let's just get through some of this stuff first. So authentication, Kerberos is the default strong authentication. We will talk about that in detail. Delegation tokens, which is part of Kerberos, we'll go into that. Authorization, Argus security policies. I might as well put Gazang up there. I might as well put HBase's own authorization, Yarn, HDFS. Each service actually has different authorization components to it because each service does something different. If I'm Yarn, I'm managing resources and managing the capacity scheduler, for example. That has the notion of authorization. Who can use what queue to actually do what kind of work? Well, that's very different from HDFS, which is a storage system, which says who can store what file where and who has permissions to read write to that file. And that's also very different from a database, which would be grant. You can look at this table, you can select this table, you can write to this table, that sort of stuff. So for each component, this is what makes it complicated. We have different levels of authorization. OS security. This is actually pretty relevant because Hadoop, by default, you don't turn anything on. And even later, uses the OS a lot for security. Since at the end of the day, we have to remember Hadoop is actually a bunch of Java processes running on your OS, be it Windows or be it Linux. There's going to be a little bit more Linux focus when we hit the Kerberos, but given that it's all related, if you abstract away the gory details, the fundamental code is still the same in Hadoop. So the delegation of access and the mechanisms of authorization and authentication are the same. So hold your breath on the OS stuff. Data protection. I don't have too much on this. In fact, I think I skipped a lot of it because encryption is in its infancy right now. There's a few third parties. If anyone's actually interested in talking about it, happy to talk about some of the things that are out there. But let's talk about what people usually implement.